As we have covered the very basic characters of the Russian language, before moving on to totally new territory of the characters which don't look like English and don't sound like English, let us cover some of the confusions and the questions that you might have in your mind. First, reading Russian is very easy, unlike actually learning the actual language. It is because it has very strict rules on how to pronounce the language. You will not find weird silences like you find in English. So basically, it is language which is pronounced how it is written and follows the rules, even when it is not pronounced how it is written. So there are very specific rules on how to pronounce the language. And since it has very specific rules, it leaves very less room for guessing. So you have to put time and efforts into learning how to read. We will get on those specific rules later on, after we do cover the alphabets. Second, why do vowels and consonants matter anyways? We have learned it like anything that these are vowels and these are consonants. We are going to encounter 10 vowels and the rest consonants in Russian as well. But why does it matter if something is vowel or if something is consonant? So, a vowel is a sound which leaves your mouth without having any interruption with your tongue. So basically, any sound which comes out of your throat, out of your mouth, with an open mouth, without any intervention of your tongue or your nasal cavity is called a vowel. Can you please say O with me? O, O, O. You see, the sound just came out from here to here uninterrupted, without being interrupted. Now, when actually are these vowels used? They change the pronunciation of the consonants. So basically, they can make a g sound like k if there is a vowel after it. We will get into these more specific rules later on, but for now it is just important to know that vowels change the pronunciation of consonant. Further, they also play a very big role in how those vowels or how those words will end according to grammar. Further, if you want to properly read a word, you have to divide it in syllables. What is syllable? A syllable is vowel preceded by a consonant. So basically, you can cut a word into different parts based on where it has vowel and where that vowel has consonant before it. So it basically gives you a formula on how to cut your words, to pronounce it in chunks. And when you take big words and you divide them in separate small chunks, it becomes very easy to pronounce them. And that is what vowels allow us to do. We will learn more about how to do this and how to learn pronunciation of Russian words by cutting it into separate chunks when we come to the pronunciation videos later on. Now that we know vowels are actually important and not just a list of characters that you have to read, the second question you might have is, why are their characters similar to English anyways? Isn't Russian supposed to be an entirely separate and different language from English, even falling in different language family? You'd be right. But the issue is that English and Russian both have similar origins. What is the writing type of English? It is Latin, right? The writing type of Russian is called Cyrillic. Now, Latin and Cyrillic both originate from Greek language, and hence they took some of the words some of the characters which they found convenient from Greek, which they thought will be useful in their language. That's why Russian is not cheating from English. But English and Russian both are cheating from Greek language. I hope that answers your questions. Now, for reading, which resources should you use? Like, if you want to learn to read in Russian, what resources should you use? Duolingo is very bad for all other aspects of the language. But reading, on learning how to read, that is where Duolingo shines. You can spend about a week, not more than that, perfecting your characters in the character section of your Duolingo application. It will teach you, quite frankly, how to read at least to a very medium level. At that point where you will be able to read any of the things that you encounter in your way. So go ahead, complete those characters in Duolingo. But remember, Duolingo is good only for that and only for perhaps 4 to 500 basic vocabulary words that you need. Duolingo is not better or not good for anything more than that, because it doesn't tells you any grammatical rules, it doesn't tells you any intonation, any pronunciation. It just believes and hopes that you'll pick up the patterns. Why Duolingo doesn't work is that it hopes that you will pick the patterns as it as it bombards with you with tens of thousands of characters of words of sentences. The issue with that is, for that level of pattern recognition, you need to have an input size that is huge. So basically, you would need tens of hundreds of hours of immersion to pick up very basic grammatical rules. That is why Duolingo doesn't work, because it's not asking you to dedicate tens of thousands of hours into it. It's just asking you for 5 minutes. And immersion does not work in 5 minutes. Immersion takes time. And Duolingo is trying to teach you language with immersion without actually you having to dedicate the time that is needed to have that immersion took effect on you. That's why learn how to read in Russian from Duolingo's character section and then move on. The next thing is that no, even though English has characters which look like Russian and which sound like Russian, or perhaps the other way I should say, Russian words do not sound exactly like English. I'll tell you why. Even though you can see tot and think, oh, it sounds just like English tot, but you'd be wrong, because there is very basic reason behind that. The first one is the tongue placement. Try to speak a sentence in English. You would notice that your tongue does a lot of movements. It is touching your palates, it is touching your teeth, the upper teeth, the lower teeth. It is doing a lot of movement. The front part of the tongue, the middle part of the tongue. Well, in Russian, the tongue has this tendency to rest near your bottom teeth. All of the words that come out without the interaction of your tongue for the most part. You see that difference? That is why the Russian, this word in Russian is called tot, tot, and in English it is called tot. So instead of ta, you say ta. It's a very subtle difference. But when it comes to pronouncing these words, it's very obvious that someone doesn't know the basics. So stop treating Russian like it's English. You will have to learn it all anew on how to pronounce the words. And we'll get on to that. It's just a primer so that you have that mental understanding that no, this is not similar to this. Secondly, Russian has very little aspirated consonants. Now, what are aspirated consonants? Put your palm in front of your mouth and speak in English. What you will notice is a lot of air bursts out of your mouth.